Hey guys, we are looking at an absolute value inequality, okay? When you are solving problems like this, there's 4 types of answers you can get, okay? You can get an and inequality, an or inequality, all real numbers, or no solution, okay? Obviously here I'm just doing one example, so you'll see one of them, but if you want to see a video where I show all 4 answers with different problems in one video, I'll link that in the corner for you, okay? But let's go ahead and look at this one. So when I am doing a problem like this, the first thing I want is to get my absolute value bars alone, okay? Meaning I don't want this -5 here, and I don't want this 5 being multiplied here. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides, because then that goes away. And I'm left with 5 times the absolute value of x minus 8. I always draw my absolute value bars like really tall so it doesn't look like a 1. So that's why I do that, okay? Is greater than 15 plus 5 is 20, okay? All right, from there, I don't want that 5 being multiplied, so I'm going to divide it off on both sides, okay? Now, side note, if that had been a negative, I would flip the sign, but it's not, so we're good, okay? Those cancel out, and I'm left with the absolute value of x minus 8 is greater than 20 divided by 5 is 4, okay? All right, my absolute value bars are alone. I'm feeling good, so now we can start to really figure out what x can be, okay? Now, when I'm solving absolute value inequalities, at this point, I am going to split this into 2 different inequalities, okay? And if you're like, what is she talking about? Why does that work? I'll link a video in the corner where I explain why this works, okay? So I'm going to have one of them be, I'm just dropping the absolute value bars, so it's going to be x minus 8 is greater than 4, okay? The other one, I'm also dropping the absolute value bars, switching the sign, and changing the 4 to a negative, okay? So those are my 2. This one, we just flip the sign and change that to a negative, okay? Now, the other thing I need to know is if this is an and inequality or an or inequality. Remember I said you could have 4 possible types of answers? Well, the no solution and all real numbers answers would have to do with if this 4 up here were negative, okay? Since it's positive, I don't have to worry about those ones. So I just need to know if it's an and inequality or an or inequality, okay? And one of the ways to tell is to just look at this sign here. When my absolute value is on the left side, if this is a greater than sign, that means it's going to be an or inequality. And one way to remember that is if you think of greater. I know that's not how you spell greater, but it helps you remember that it is an or inequality. And again, if you're like, why? Watch that video I linked a minute ago and it'll explain this as well, okay? But let's go ahead now that we know it's an or inequality, and get the x's alone on both of these, okay? So I'm going to add 8 to both sides here. So I end up with x is greater than 12, or I'm going to add 8 to both sides here, and I get x is less than -4 plus 8 would give me 4, okay? So those are my 2 answers. Now, inequalities and number lines love each other. They're like best friends. So we're going to look at this on a number line really fast to help us kind of understand what this looks like. And then we're going to write it in interval notation, okay? So if I were to graph this on my number line, I would say x is greater than 12, which means I use an open circle at 12, and it's any number greater than, so any number that way, right? Or x can be less than 4. So I have an open circle at 4, and less than would be that way, okay? So any number over here up until 4, any number over here till 12, I can pick, and I can plug it in here or here, and I will get an inequality statement that is true, okay? Now, if you want this in interval notation, we would say you can pick any number from -infinity to 4, right? And then I got to decide if I use parentheses or brackets. Infinities always get parentheses. And then the 4 is also going to get a parenthesis because it can't actually be 4. If it could, if this were an equal to over here, I would use a bracket, okay? And then we have over here, we can pick anything from 12 to infinity. And we use parentheses again, not brackets, because it can't actually be 12. And infinity always gets a parenthesis, okay? And then we put a little u in the middle to show a union that these are together, okay? So this and this are the same answer, just written in different forms, okay? All right, I hope this made sense. I'm gonna link a playlist for you that has a bunch of other examples if you need it. Thanks.